James Baldwin once said that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. When I was 19 years old, I was on a family vacation in South Carolina, and my grandmother let me, my cousin, and her best friend, who I was dating at the time, to borrow the van and go out and have a fun night at a local bowling alley that was not too far from our resort. And we had a good time, but no more than about a minute or so after leaving the bowling alley, coming up behind us, we saw those awful red and blue lights that brings about a certain level of anxiety and fear in African Americans all across this country. There was a police officer that had pulled us over, and it happened to be a white officer. And as he approached the van, he asked me if I knew why he pulled us over. Now, being in an area where most of the porches were peppered with Confederate flags, I had a good idea why he pulled us over. And it had nothing to do with the traffic violation, but everything to do with the color of our skin. However, I told him, no, I have no clue why you pulled us over. And he told me it was because we didn't slow down or yield at a yield sign that was not too far behind us. Now, when he said this, I really knew something was up, because we actually had to stop at that yield sign for a few seconds before merging onto a road that had a lot of traffic. And I said, well, maybe you mistook our van for another van, and I could tell that he took offense to my defense, and he then asked me to step out of the vehicle. Now, at this point, I was a bit confused because I was just ready to hand him my license and my registration. I knew the procedure. And I said, well, why do I have to get out? And then he raised his tone and then told me to step out of the vehicle. Now, I wasn't in a place to argue with the officer, and I didn't want to endanger anybody else that was in the van with me. So I reluctantly got out. And as I was doing so, he told me to put my hands on the hood of the van. So as I began walking toward the front of the van, I was suddenly yanked back, having my shirt ripped. And I just remember hearing my cousin in the car scream because she had no clue what the commotion was all about on the outside of the van. And I just remember instinctively turning toward the officer and saying, what are you doing? He told me to put my hands on the hood. He said, well, now put your hands on the back of the van. And at this point, I was a bit concerned because I've seen and heard of devastating stories starting off just like this. But I went ahead and I put my hands on the back of the van, and he just began to search me and to frisk me while stating South Carolina law to me. And as he was doing this, I heard an urgent call come through his radio, but he ignored it and just continued to search me. And all I had on was basketball shorts, a now ripped t-shirt, and slides on my feet, yet he continued to search me. I felt violated and disrespected, not just as a human being, but also as an African American. I could tell what this was all about. And as he continued to search me, I heard that urgent call come through his radio yet again. But fortunately, this time, he responded to it. And he said, I'll be right there. And as he began to rush off, he told me to get on out of here and stay in for the night. Now, I'm fortunate that the officer was called away that night, and that my situation wasn't that of Philando Castile's, a black man who was also driving around with his girlfriend and was pulled over by an officer. However, Philando was shot dead while still sitting in his car, reaching for his ID that the officer requested. There are so many others who are not here to tell their stories of police brutality, like Mike Brown, Sandra Bland, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. Yes, we're still saying her name. And so many others who are no longer here with us. So, why do I bring this up? What's my goal here? Well, when you zoom out, my goal is to help bring about more equality in this country. But when you zoom in, my goal is to help disrupt police brutality, to shed more light on it, and to ultimately help bring that to an end. On January 6, 2021, as Trump supporters stormed our nation's capital, what we witnessed was a massive lack of force by our police force against white Trump supporters. What we also witnessed was a discriminative double standard, not just a privilege, that blacks in this country never received. What if those supporters, those rioters, those insurrectionists were black? I dare say we would have witnessed a massacre. Over the years, I've spoken to many professionals and students on how to bring their goals to fruition. And I always provide them with 3 actionable steps on how to help bring this about. And the first of these steps is to have a childlike imagination. Now, the reason why I say to have a childlike imagination is because the imagination of a kid is rarely ever damaged, or limited rather, by the negativity of their past. They're kids, they're young, they don't have much of a past to begin with. But there's also still a bit of an innocent ignorance that exists within them. But a childlike imagination is one of the things that we most admire and revere about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was his ability to utilize his imagination, to have a vision, to have a dream, even despite the racial tension and turmoil that surrounded Black America. Even while blacks were being beaten by police officers, while we were attacked by their dogs, while we were sprayed with fire hoses, he still imagined a better day beyond these things and still held equality in his sights. Look, police brutality is nothing new. It's just now being streamed as well as televised. For a moment, just imagine if during the field training process for an officer, they had to be immersed into the communities in which they would one day be serving by way of community service. Aren't they here to both protect and to serve? Just imagine if their FTO, which is the field training officer, actually graded their performance, their engagement, their interaction with community members. What I think we would then find out is if these officers are even fit to serve in these particular communities. It's unfortunate, but every officer is not fit to serve and interact in every single community. Again, it really is unfortunate, but it's true. Now, just imagine if we took just a little bit more time to ensure the competencies of our officers. It takes 4 years to become a teacher. It takes 5 to 7 years to become a lawyer. It takes 10+ years to become a fully licensed doctor. But it only takes 4 months to become a police officer. I truly believe that a number of things can be changed. Now, this immersive process can help develop something that has been totally non-existent between, let's face it, white police officers and the Black communities in which they serve. And that thing that has been non-existent is trust. There's more of a fear that exists as opposed to trust. And that shouldn't be the case. Now, will this immersive process help make everything sunshine and rainbows? No, of course not. But at least having something in place that would ensure that police officers truly knows those of the community, and that members of the community truly knows who the officers are, that can at least help develop some type of mutual respect. And beyond this respect, hopefully trust can also be developed. Beyond that trust, the fear that exists, hopefully that can also disappear. But who knows? This is just my childlike imagination at work here. There's a quote that says, "Look at a man the way he is, he only becomes worse. But look at him for what he could be, then he becomes all that he should be." Let's zoom out and not only look at America for what it is, but let's use our childlike imagination to see America for what it could be. Then we can soon step into all that we should be. So that's step number 1, to have a childlike imagination. Step number 2 is to need your wants. Now, what I mean by this is, we'll often say that we want this and we want that. We want police brutality to stop. We want more equality in this country. But many times we don't realize that our wants are optional. Like, if you don't get the thing that you want, you'll just be willing to fight on a different day to get that thing. So while your desire may be constant, your demand for them may be very inconsistent. But when you don't get the things that you need, that scars you deep. Those are the things that you demand constantly. I want you all to use your imagination with me just one more time to really see the difference between a want versus a need. So I want you to imagine yourself right now in the desert. You've been there all day. The heat is excruciating. You're hot, you're dehydrated, you're thirsty. What's something that you need in that very moment? Right, water. Now, if you needed water in that moment, you would find yourself digging into a cactus with your bare hands just to get that water out. Why? Because your life depends on it. You need it. But if you only wanted water in that moment, you would find yourself walking right by that cactus and all the cacti in the desert looking for an easier option, some type of pond or spring that'll be really difficult for you to find. And that's the difference between a want versus a need. When you need something, you'll be willing to go all out to get that thing. Your desire and your pursuit of that thing will increase exponentially. We need to begin to show that we need for police brutality to stop, that we need for laws and legislations to be passed that will hold these officers accountable for these brutal crimes that they commit, that we need for Black people to not be looked at as a minor people just because we're referred to as minorities. If we want to maintain the status as the most powerful nation in the world, then we need to find ways to increase the unity and not enhance the divide. Personally, I need for my 7-year-old son and his generation as they get older to not have to have this same conversation that we're having right now. Simply put, we need equality. So that's step number 2, to need your wants. And as you make this conversion from a want over to a need, your pursuit will take you exactly where you need to be. Now, the third and final step is to focus on the journey. Now look, this will not be easy because you'll desire that end result, that end goal so badly that you'll be tempted to focus on that. But look, there's no need to. that end goal is already ingrained in you. Your focus only needs to be on today's work, all that it takes to get you to your desired end tomorrow. Now look, I've been an athlete my entire life, and I've played sports from bitty basketball at the West Philadelphia YMCA on up to professional basketball across the globe. And I've been fortunate to win a number of championships along the way. And one of the greatest lessons I've taken from that experience is this. At the beginning of every season, our team's goal was to win a championship in the end. No doubt about it. But what our coaches did an amazing job of was helping us to focus on today's work, on today's practice, on today's conditioning, on today's game. That's all that mattered. They taught us what I call success of success, how to have success today, and when that day is gone and the next day comes, how to have success again that next day, and to just build on it day after day. And while we were so focused on the fruits of the journey, we would suddenly look up and boom, our end goal was right before our eyes. Or in some cases, we came mighty, mighty close. And the truth is, that's what it's all about. Making as much growth, making as much progress, making as much change as you humanly and possibly can. Malcolm X once said that change is only a good thing if you change in a good way. Let's embrace making a good change. Enjoy the journey. Thank you.